computer. All right. So you'll need to go ahead and log in. And you should be able to use the invitation to get in so you can see the screen. Kind of just some housekeeping, and then we'll get started. Of course, this week we had XLS4 was due, as was XLS5, and then you had exam overview, Chapter 5. Now, remember, sometimes we'll work ahead on these Excel cases. So when I say, okay, we do one and we're ahead, it's probably a good idea right then to upload the thing and not wait around. Now, often, whatever I've used, I'll just leave it there so you can see it that you don't. But there really is just no reason you shouldn't have the cases time, usually ahead. The same thing with the exams. You can work ahead on them if you care to. Now, I had at the end, I think on Tuesday, we had talked about it. I said we're going to take a look at the exam number 1. So I want to do that, and that's in week 4. So if you go down to week 4 module, which is the 26th and the 28th, I have a couple of resources there for you. I have a sample exam, exam 1, part 1, which is just a set of objective questions. So that sample you can take a look at that will give you a sense of what's there. Then I had the exam, and it's just simply objective questions, and you got 2 hours to finish it, 40 items, 3 attempts. The highest score is recorded, and it's due on March 1st at 5 p.m. I have a couple of accommodations I have to make, so that's why you see a little bit of a difference there. So that's there for you. Then exam 1, part 2. When I do an exam, I usually have 2 parts to it. One of them is an objective exam, and the other is a hands-on kind of thing. So part 2 is the hands-on BISS, and that, like I said, I've got the instructions in there for you, and to walk through them, and you do them, and you'll have had the exam 1, part 2 finished. Let's look at the instructions for just a moment, and we'll go through there. And I'm just going to go step by step. There's a file in there, the Badger Jams file, and we used it. And this is it's the old case from the Solve It text I used to use. But I'm going to ask you to assume the following changes from the base figures in the case. So when you open up that file, the Badger Jams file, which is XLS6, you're going to find it there, and it has some base figures, okay? And that's the one where we were doing the total cost analysis, and we're doing the break-even analysis. Now I'm going to ask you to go in and make some increments and decrements to increase the rent 5.3%, advertising 2.91%, the commercial stove, decrease it, the cooking equipment, increase the cost of it, and then the shipping add to that. And we went through that when we looked at that case, and we did those, when we went to the assumptions area and changed those figures on Badger Jam. So that's really what I want you to do, just change those figures just so that we get used to using assumptions and playing around with them. Now, let's go back for a moment up there to XLS6. And remember we had I had the key there, and well, let's see, we've got the key there for 6. And let's go find the Badger Jams file. It should be in the files. And let's look on it. Here it is. It's called the Badger Jams Key Spring 16. And let's go ahead and download it because it will be instructive for us here to take a look at it. You could use the work in progress too, but probably the key, that file. Does everybody see that file there over in the files section in Canvas? Yay? Okay. Yeah, it's called Badger Jams Key Spring 16. If you go in the files section in Canvas, you'll find it. You see it says Badger Jams key over the files section. So let me walk you through the navigation to it. I'm going to go back over, and if I look in the left-hand side, you should see, in fact, tell you what I'll do. I'll go to the settings, and I'll just go ahead and do a student view. Okay? Now I'm seeing the same thing you are. I'm going to click Files. Okay? And I can either do a search, or I'm going to scroll down to Badger Jams, and you'll see Badger Jams key, Spring 16. Did you find it? Okay, good. Now, for exam 1, part 2, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to download that file and go into those assumptions areas, okay? And I'm going to ask you to change them according to those instructions I've given you. And just to refresh our memory, let's go ahead and download it and take a look at it real quickly. Okay. And I'll enable the editing on it. And you'll note this is the one where we learned about contribution margin, okay? We learned about that. We learned about, and then I provided you just a simple break-even chart over there, and we went through the process of kind of reverse engineering the thing. You can right-click and you can see the settings that have been used to produce this. But the main thing I'm after is I'm going to give you a set of changes in there that in those, when I give you those instructions, I'm saying, okay, change this, change the commercial stove. So I'm going to ask you to make some changes in those amounts. Got me? Okay. And then take it from there. That's really all you're doing. Now, why? The reason is because, you know, understanding the total cost concept and contribution margin, that's important, okay? And you do need to understand that. Basically, what it says is when I sell an item, I subtract the variable costs per unit from the revenue, and that gives me the amount of money I have left over to pay fixed costs, and that's the contribution margin. The fixed costs are important to me because those are costs I have to pay. I have no choice. Sometimes if I'm starting up a business or I'm doing a new project in an existing business, they're also known as sunk costs. There are some things that you're there, you got to buy the stove, you have to have the equipment, that type of thing. And so I'm going to ask you to change those and see what it looks like in terms of break-even units and break-even and break-even dollars. And if you're not mindful of what's going on with your contribution margin, you can eventually end up like a dog chasing its tail. And this is where people will get themselves in trouble, is where they will do one of two things. They'll either too deeply discount what they sell, okay, and they won't have enough money to pay their fixed costs, or they will underestimate what they need to have in terms of a sales price per unit in a highly capital intensive kind of business or industry. So having a grasp of it helps you get a sense of, all right, what kind of leverage have I got here? If I have a contribution margin that's pretty high, and I can divide 2240 by 3995 and give you the percentage, it's a pretty good percentage. But as it shrinks, I get closer and closer to the situation where I'm really not getting the kind of return off of those assets that I should get. That's why we did all the ratios. This stuff all kind of works together, and over time, the principle over time will just kind of settle in your brain. And if you work in a particular industry long enough, it'll start to make sense to you. Okay. The biggest cost, for example, in the oil business, the biggest costs entail two things. One is, at least in this state, is buying mineral rights. Okay. if somebody owns a piece of land, they can own the surface, but someone else could own the mineral rights. And so if you're an oil company, you're going to have to buy the mineral rights to be able to get the oil, and then you're going to have to pay somebody for the surface rights to come on their land unless you've bought the land from them. Okay, those are fixed costs, but they're also sunk costs, literally, that you have to pay. And before you even get 1 ounce of profit off of a barrel of oil, you've got to drill and get the oil. If you go out in the middle of the North Atlantic, it becomes very tenuous. And so folks who are in the energy industry take a lot of heat. I understand that. By the same token, they are willing to take $3 or $4 billion and literally put it in a hole in the ground to see if they can get more gas and oil for us. Because we love petroleum and all over the world. We like things made of plastic. We like, to drive our cars. And so that's literally is a sunk cost. In this situation, this person is going into this business, they're going to have to pay rent, advertising, etc. So I'm going to ask you to go in there in the directions and change these variables out. Got it? That's exam 2, part 2. Now, go back over here for just a minute. I'm going to leave the student view. And back down to the module. It would be in your best interest as you get ready to take, as you get ready to do exam 1, part 2, to just download the instructions. So you'll have them. So you'll see, for example, here's the rent, advertising, and then after you do that, I ask you to go ahead and then compute the selling price required to keep the break-even unit. So watch what's going on here. Okay, this is exam 1, part 2. In the first paragraph, tell you what to use, and that's that Badger Jams. And then the second paragraph, there or sentence, I give you the changes, the increments and the decrements, the increases and the decreases in those key variables. Okay, and then the next thing I ask you to do is, once you get that result, then now tell me how much have you got to sell this product for to keep break-even units at 1147, and that means you're going to have to adjust the price. Now, there's a tool that we looked at, and we use. It's called the goal seek that would easily let you do that. You said, well, could I just go into the variable and just change the price? Sure, you can. But why do that if you might end up having to do 1,000 iterations when you could use the goal seek? And your target would be whatever cell that is, and then the amount would be 1147, and then the variable you're going to change is the price. Got it? So far? So that's what I'm asking you to do there, and that's pretty much it. Okay. And again, the whole point of this is just to get you acclimated to saying, okay, I have a set of data. What are the possible outcomes? And that's why in Excel, when you go in and when you click on the data tab, you're going to see 3 tools: the goal seek, which works with one variable. Then you're going to see the scenario manager, which works with many variables. And then you're going to see the data table, and we'll look at one of those, I think, next week or a week or a couple of weeks. And that table is where I can plug in 2 variables, and I say, okay, at a given level for this variable on the horizontal axis, and I have this level of this variable at the vertical axis, what is the result? And I think we're going to we'll look at a capital budget, and we're going to do some messing around with interest rates, or what are called capital hurdle rates, and then also, if I'm not mistaken, the annual income that they bring in. So that's part 1. That's exam 1, part 2. Got it? That's pretty much what I'm after there. Now, let's go back for a moment because I want to make sure we're clear on when this thing is due. Exam 1, part 1. Sometimes I have to make accommodations, so that's why you'll see something that says multiple dates. And you probably have figured out what that might be about. So to accommodate some more or one or more folks, I have to do that, okay? Otherwise, if you see for everyone, you click on there, you're going to see, unless you've got one of those, you're looking at March 1st, 5 p.m. And then I have a limited amount of time when you can see the results. Okay? Now, everybody's understanding about submitting work now. I've complained about it to Canvas. I've complained about it to the powers that be till they've told me to shut up, which I will now. But the bottom line is this: you can get really fooled when you go to submit your work. When you get ready to submit an assignment, not an exam, but something you upload, you see the little green button up in the right corner and it says submit, correct? Click that and then scroll down and you'll see that's where to upload the file. Got me? It fooled me, and I don't know what's happened. I guess they've changed something on the page design. I don't know. But the first time I was going, huh? So beware of that. And I think I've kind of alerted everybody to that as well. Now, it's all right. You've got exam one, blah, blah, blah. All right. I have resources here for you. Of the resource file for the cases, and I also have a resource file for you at the end of each module as far as quizzes and exams. So you can open that up and it will tell you what quiz or exam we're working on. And there's exam one, part one, and it will tell you where those files are, what they're all about. Okay? Yes? No? Okay. Let me stop and see if anybody has any questions. Anybody? That easy? I see bobbleheads galore. Okay, we'll see. I hope so. It should be. But those files will cover all the exams. Let me see if, again, I don't remember the setting that I put on it. We'll go take a look at it real quickly here. I'm seeing someone has a question. Hang on. Exactly. Exam has two parts, and both are done online. Yes. Part one are the objective, and it's an objective quiz, true, false, that type of thing. Part two is a hands-on. So yes, both are done online. Yeah. Anybody else have a question? Okay. Let me go back here. I want to look at it, the settings for it. Okay, you've got 2 hours. There's 40 items. You get 3 attempts. It takes the highest score. Okay? So time yourself accordingly. And it will take your highest score. The highest score you get is recorded. You get 3 attempts. Got it? Now beware, I have it set up so that it goes a question at a time. So it won't be really easy to just print them all at once, I understand. What? I didn't do that. So they're usually at just one question at a time. But you get three big attempts. High score recorded, 2 hours, 40 items. Fair enough? Yes? Everybody clear in terms of the exam one, part two? The hands-on part? Yes? Okay. All righty. Now, I wasn't exactly sure. Well, when you have multiple attempts like that, I'm not really comfortable walking you through a preview of it. I mean, you're going to try it 3 times. So keep notes. So I wanted move us, let's take a peek down here at XLS7. Now, this is down here in week 5. As I said before, there'll be some times when we work ahead on these cases, all right? Now, next week you'll have the break-even and economic order quantity quiz. And again, if you want to know what the resources are for that quiz, I've got them listed. You with me there? You can just go down to the end of that module and you'll see them. So you're going to have a quiz over break-even. Economic order quantity, the EOQ is a tool that we use to try to figure out, to balance off 2 issues. One is to make sure I don't have too much inventory on the floor, because if I have too much inventory, it's costing me an excessive amount of money. But if I don't have enough and I can't fulfill the orders for my customers, I've got an even bigger problem on my hands. So we use the EOQ to try to figure out how much I order. Now, let me say this. What we'll do here in Excel is a very simplistic model and just the bare bones model, but it's important for you to understand that it's a balancing act that everybody tries to handle. And there are some exceptionally sophisticated systems out there that will give you that will help you determine the demand on any given product on any given day. Probably the best inventory, I would say probably the best inventory people in the world would have to be Walmart. Their system's just incredible. You can only imagine with all the items they carry and the number of stores they have in all this business. And you can go in and look and find out if I'm looking for whatever, is it at this store or that store? And they're always balancing that off, that problem. And the issue of handling the economic order, in other words, ordering enough stuff and having it there to fulfill customers' needs, also then entails a lot of issues in terms of logistics, in terms of storage and distribution, and what we call the supply chain. And if you've not worked with it or had parents who've worked with it or maybe relatives who've worked for companies that do that, it's hard to understand when I say it's just miraculous. It's miraculous that we can have an iPhone that's made in a plant in China and it can be here in less than a week, ready to be put on a shelf in an iPhone store or ready for you to order or whatever, or a phone company, whoever you might want to get it from. This is just an amazing thing, and it's what makes a global economy possible. Understanding the basic principles of it is really about all that we can cover, because when you go from there, then you start to talk about a whole lot of different types of problems in modeling inventory, dealing with the seasonality issues, dealing with transportation and logistics issues, and all of that. How do we get something from A to B? And so, as I say, and I'll say it again, most students, when they come down to year 4, if I were to stop them and say, "Hey, have you got a job? What's your prospects?" It's going, okay. The accounting students say, "Yeah, I've been working so and so." Sometimes the finance students and computer science have jobs chasing them. The rest of those are often, there's not much there. Maybe. But if you start to think about the logistics industry, and the companies that the big dogs in those are going to be obviously FedEx and UPS. They're always looking for people in that industry. They're looking for folks who are not scared of numbers. Okay, and they're looking for folks who want to be part of all of that and help make sure that an order gets fulfilled. I don't care how much stuff you sell. Okay, if you can't get it to the customer, it doesn't matter. So regardless of how much Dr. Green could teach you about marketing and selling, if you can't get it to the client or the customer, all that knowledge is wasted. So it's got to get there. And anybody who's a marketer will tell you, you live or die on the basis of logistics. Can I get the stuff to the people on time? And if you think about the weather that we've had, that kind of craziness, or you think about like out in California with the fires that they had, and they had those terrible, terrible fires that are right up and down the corridor there, the north-south corridor in California. There's major disruptions of their supply chains. And most of everything, I think I've seen the figure like 85 or 90% of all things made in the world are shipped via water at some point. But once they hit land, it becomes an issue of, do I put it on the train? Do I put it on send it out the door in a semi? Once I've got it into a particular distribution center, do I load it in vans, etc.? And how all that comes together. It's fascinating stuff, and it can sometimes be life or death, especially with disaster kinds of, when disasters occur, is how quickly can we get stuff to people? How fast can we get them the material they need on day 1, day 2, day 3, etc. Well, all that being said, there's that quiz is due. I've got the due dates on it, and let's take a look at it real quick. And it's 30 minutes, 10 items, 2 attempts, highest score recorded. So there's not that many items on there. And then I think you have an exam also from Few, that text, which is the show me the data. And so I have the resources there for those quizzes and exams that you'll want to take a look at. Yes? No? Okay. All right. Anybody have a question about that? Clear as mud. Okay. Let's talk about the issue of economic order quantity, and let's take a look at XLS number 7. Now, before we do this, I want to make sure, can everybody go into module week 5, and everybody see this first file called Hardware Nuts Cool, okay? This is an example for XLS 7. You see that one? Let's download that file and take a look at it for just a second. We're going to see some different kinds of things like use of a function. So let's download the file. And if you wanted to upload it for your XLS 7, you most certainly could. There are a couple, I think at least 1 or 2 files that follow along from the textbook if you want to have the experience of, okay, and I'll refer to those, it's like, you know, the figure 18.1 or whatever. If I want to see a step by step process, and that's fine. I've got those there for you if you care to do that. And often what I'll do is I'll review those, but not go to the great detail. Now, as I've said before, a spreadsheet is a spreadsheet is a spreadsheet, meaning over time, if you get something that'll work for you or makes sense, then you want to use it like a template. And you want to keep it and tweak it and make it better all the time. This is from a company, okay? They sell hardware, and let's take a look at it. And I want to spend a little bit of time looking at it here. Now you'll notice, first thing you'll see over there in cell A1. It's an economic order quantity system of inventory control. Okay, so we're going to try to figure out how much stuff should we have on hand, how much can we have called work in process or in transit, and then how much do we have and can we meet our orders. And the EOQ is just, it's a fairly simple formula that lets us do that based upon our volume. Okay. As I said before, there are very, very sophisticated inventory systems out there, and inventory is kind of a dull thing that most people would want, kind of dull, until your stuff doesn't get there on time, or doesn't get there at all. And or when the shipment arrives, it's not what you need. And you've probably had that experience. You bought something, you might have gone to the store and bought something, that was boxed up and you thought it had everything in there. It gives you a list of components and you find out it doesn't. Or you go to the store, and you go to Best Buy and you purchase something and you find out it doesn't have all the parts. It doesn't have a warranty card. Inventory is one of those areas where you're in direct contact with the customer. There are also some opportunities, if you're fairly decent at writing, to write technical guides, i.e. the instructions that you get. When you open them up today, you're going to see English, some English and certainly Spanish. You may see French and German. You've had that experience and you look at it and you go, what are the instructions? What do I do? And they try to include as many pictures as they can. But if you've had the frustration of buying something, then you can't get it set up to work. That's a piece of the whole thing as well, in that issue of customer fulfillment and satisfaction. So let's look at this now. I've got the documentation area. I've got all that information in there. Okay, and you may be curious, you've seen that thing where it talks about macros. Okay, macros, and we'll do a couple of them as we come near the end of the Excel files, the Excel portion of the cases. And a macros is simply, it records keystrokes. So it records certain things that you do, and then it's saved. So it's executable code. And you always want to make sure, if you've got a macro in a spreadsheet, that you alert somebody. Because if not, they'll get a security alert and they might delete the file that you just sent them. So you want to make sure that you're aware of that. A macro is a thing that people can use what they call a SQL or SQL injection and put a virus in a file. That's how files get corrupted. People will put stuff in like a Word file. So you want to make sure that there are no macros in that file. We're good. Now I have an assumptions area over here. Okay, and you're going to see we have the fixed cost of ordering. Start to sound familiar. Then we have the inventory carrying costs as a percent of inventory value. Now, if you think about this for just a moment, okay, and what you've got is you have a fixed cost. Yes.
This is like separate because I was trying to compare this to XLS5, but I couldn't find the file for XLS5. It's too much.
You couldn't find the file for XLS5. Which one was it? Clintwood?
Yeah, Clintwood.
Okay, let's go back up to the module here. Yeah, let's look at it for just a sec. Now. Now I gave the key for 5. This is the one out of the textbook. And I'll go back over into the files and see, because we had it open to everybody when we were working with it. And let's put in Clintwood. Now let's look at the resources there for just a second. 5. Yeah, it's XLS5 WIP, WIP, and it's in the files section of Canvas. That's called XLS5 work in progress. And then there's a last year XLS in there as well. Did you find it? Okay. Yeah, it's okay. That's fine. It's a good question. If you're having trouble finding it, you need to let me know about it. All righty. Now let's go back over here for just a second, and let's open up the heart. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Now let's take just a few minutes about this and talk about this. If you take a look there in terms of that purple assumptions area, okay, this sounds a lot like total cost. Look at the elements that you've got there. You have a fixed cost of carrying inventory. If you have inventory, you got to store it. You have to keep it safe. You may have to refrigerate it or keep it in a controlled climate. And if you're if you're renting space or you own space, just the square footage that it occupies costs you money. So you have a fixed cost of inventory, plus you have a fixed cost of ordering. And you say, what do you mean? Here's the deal. Let's say that I order stuff from a company that I do business with. It's going to cost me the same amount of money to order one item as it will cost to order 10,000 items, because somebody's got to fill out a form and do the order. You got me? So if I order five sets of something, well, I've got to go in there and I've got to place the order. If I order 5,000, it's the same process. I just add 3 zeros. And it costs me basically the same amount of money. So there's a fixed cost of ordering. So just as we talked about that total cost equation, we have a fixed cost. Now, if you don't get this, then you need to ask me, or you need to think real clearly, because if you don't get this, you're in trouble. And most business people are out there. One of the things about running a business is this. It looks very easy and simple to do. Unfortunately, it's not. That's why 90% of them or 80% of them fail in the first 5 years, because I'll hear people come, they'll tell me, oh, anybody can run a business. And I just go, yeah, sure. That's why 80% of them don't make it in the first 5 years, for a variety of reasons. Usually the one that's the most important is the one that there's just not enough capital there. People don't put enough money into it to get it going. And they try to do it on a shoestring. And then it doesn't make. Or they overcapitalize for what the market is, or they just don't understand things like the total cost concept. Now, total cost is fixed costs plus variable costs, and variable costs are those that change according to the level of business activity. Okay? And if you look here in that next one, we see the inventory carrying cost is a percentage of inventory value. That kind of mimics a variable cost, because what we're saying is the inventory carrying cost, what it costs us to carry that, so we get the cost of ordering, that's fixed. And then we got to carry or handle the inventory, and that's a variable cost. And we charge it off as a percent of inventory value. Have you ever thought about the fact that when you walk in and you order a hamburger, or you go to a fast food place, that the kitchen and the storage facilities in the back have only enough capacity to hold about maybe a day's worth of stuff? Well, how do they operate? Well, how they operate is they have a very sophisticated supply chain, and to manage one of those, you can't be a dummy. People that manage those are exceptionally well paid, and typically, if they do a good job with one store, a franchisor like a Burger King or McDonald's or whomever will reward them with additional stores, because they know what they're doing. That's a tough game. So if you have friends out there who are working their way up as a managerial training, whatever, let me tell you something. It's tough business. My father had restaurants. I bussed tables. That's no fun. Anybody here ever got to bust a table? People are pigs, aren't they? Lord of mercy. And in my day, you could smoke in restaurants, so they'd take their cigarette and they'd put it out in the middle of the plate. About as gross as you can get. And it's hard work. And I was the bus boy, and I washed the dishes. I learned about hard work. Now, my parents also had me scheduled from working at 10 at night till 6 in the morning. So I think they're also trying to keep me chaste or something. Because working from 10 to 6 at night will get in your business. You'll be going, oh, what time is it? That's hard work. So understanding this principle, and it can be even more challenging if you're dealing, say, in an environment where you're like a distributor, okay? where you sell supplies to jobbers. There are people there in Oklahoma City who sell supplies to folks who are plumbers, cabinet makers, etc. They have inventory on the floor. They can't have too much. They can't have too little. So we try to model this. We try to use some way to mathematically model what we're looking at. So we can start to say, okay, if I change X, what happens to Y and Z? This is what we call simulating things. And eventually, if you get to the management science course, we do a lot of work with simulating numbers and simulating events. So you can see what are the realm of possible outcomes. But over here, we've got in this situation, we've got it's $150 for an order, where the order 1 or a million, and the carrying cost is a percent of the value of inventory is 25%. Okay? Now, over here in this little blue area, I've got a little calculator there on lead time. Does somebody tell me what you think I mean when I say lead time? What am I talking about? Lead time. Anybody have an idea? Here's what it means then. Let's say today is what? What's the date today? 21st? Okay. If my supplier says I need 2 weeks of lead time, what they're telling me is if I order today, I'm going to get it when? In 2 weeks. If I have an order that I was supposed to fill for my customer within the next 9 days, I've got a problem. I'm going to lose my customer. So I'd better either have the inventory on hand to meet their needs, or I'd better be willing to pay my vendor an extra amount of money to get it to me fast. Anybody here use Amazon Prime? Why do you use Amazon Prime? What's the point? Huh? It gets here faster. See, how much are you paying? $14 a month? What is it a year? Can you get a break on a year? But you pay that amount so they'll get the stuff to you faster, right? How many times do you use that? You pay $150 a year for Prime, or $99 for Prime, or whatever. If you don't order it enough times, you're just giving them money. It's just like Sam's Club or Costco. Does anybody have an idea why Sam's Club or Costco charges you to shop with them? Have you ever thought about that? That you pay for them for the privilege of walking into their holy store. I'm in Sam's, thank God. How about Costco? Why do they charge you a membership? Number one, because they can. And number two, you help fund what? Their operations. You do know you have to pay a fee to shop at Sam's, right? And when you shop at Sam's, you don't go in and buy a little bitty thing. You know, yeah, it's young parents in there buying a pile of diapers as high as that door. Yeah, give me a pallet of diapers, and I'll need about 6,000 ounces of hand sanitizer. You'll find out. Your time's coming. You'll look down at that little being you've brought into the world and go, and you'll go find your parents and say, payback is indeed part of the universe. Was I like that when I was that young? Really? So lead time is one of these things we got to be careful with to make sure that we can meet our demand. Let's go back down now into the area, the output and the computing area. And notice down here we've got some columns, and it starts with the product number, a package description, how much we have on hand, how much we have on order, the unit cost, how much we use every year. we have a thing called an order point. That is, when do we order? Okay. And then the next point is are the days lead time. How many days lead time do we need on this thing? And then what's the economic order quantity? How much should I order when it's time to order? Now, our systems here, we tend to use a lot of numerically controlled. We'll have a model like this set up, and if you're a manufacturer, well, any kind of product that you're shipping out the door, you'll have an inventory client of some type, and it will tell you when it's time to order and how much to order. The folks over in Japan, especially the car manufacturers, have some very ingenious ways. One of the ways they do this is they have a thing, it's called a Kanban. And so if you're in one of their plants and you and someone else maybe on a team, or you have somebody across the assembly line from you and they're part of your team, you're putting on the wheels or whatever you're doing, you'll have a pink slip of paper, and when you come down to that part of the barrel or cage or whatever they keep the stuff in, you'll see that pink slip of paper. That's the time you notify inventory people, we need to order, because you want to keep that line moving. Those are continuous operations. The more they can operate on a continuous basis, the cheaper it is. Now, they don't go all throughout the year because they got to stop and have maintenance and all that business. And they do have some interesting things, like if someone sees the quality of the product coming out down the line is not good, they stop the line. Manufacturing is fascinating stuff. It's fascinating stuff. If you get a chance, if you've never been into an automobile plant, go tour one, or go tour a place where people make stuff. Next time you're at Walmart, go through there and take a look and say, where did this all come from? How did they get this all here at one time? Now, as I said before, this isn't very exciting until the order's not fulfilled. And there are people out in business that are always looking for folks who say, you know, I'm not very good at sales, and I don't know how well I'd manage people, but I do think I could manage getting stuff from point A to point B. And it can be a tremendous, tremendous opportunity for you. They are looking, because as the global economy grows, they got to have more and more people handling logistics and inventory. So there's some great employment opportunities out there. Now, if you come across over here, you're going to see the day's lead time, the EOQ, and then you have the balance available. All right, let's look at for just a moment and see if I was lazy or if I use the name manager. So let's click formulas, and let's click on the name manager and see if I use it. I did. It went only 2 names. But you could fill this with all of those variables. This is a bad example in the sense that I was just lazy, didn't fill the thing out and use all of them. So I'll be resorting to doing cell referencing. All righty. Now, we've got the annual usage, and I'm going to start with this first product number, okay? And let's just walk across here. It's a carriage bolt, and we've got 6,000 of them on hand. We've got 3,000 on order. We've got the unit cost. We use, or you could say we ship or we sell 115,000 of them a year. And so there's an order point, and that order point is 11,500. So when we come down to 11,500, we order. Okay. The question is, okay, and we've got 31 days of lead time. Now let's stop and talk about this in a little bit deeper context. As you look up and down there in that column with the day's lead time, which of those concern you the most? Which of those should concern you the most? You just started your work, you finished your degree at OBU, you've got your business degree, yada, 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 and they put you in inventory to see what you're made of. See if you work weekends, you work nights. See if you'll work that in the dusty part. Management trainees, either that or they put you selling somewhere where it's not very desirable to be, to see if you'll stay with the company, if you'll stick it through. What would concern me there on that lead time column? The longest ones, why is that? Exactly. And the longer it takes the part to get to me, the greater the chances that something bad will happen. They take 31 days to get it to me. And between those 31 days, they have this massive snowstorm like we've had where all the flights get canceled and they've got feet of snow. I used to live in Prescott, Arizona, and I'm seeing I think they had 18, 19 inches, maybe they got another foot. I don't know how some of those houses are going to hold up because they're not built for that. They're built for 5 or 6, maybe 7 inches of snow because you just don't get that snow. If you go up to Flagstaff, which is off 40, it's like being in the forests of Europe. You know, they're used to 50, 60 inches a year. And it'd be interesting to see what the interstate looks like. Anybody gone down the interstate there in Arizona? You gone down it? When you pass Prescott, it gets a little fun, doesn't it? With all the switchbacks. You kind of roll down to Cottonwood, and then you're up, and then you hit the valley. My sister who lives out in the valley loves to call me when it's winter here and go, what's the temperature? And since when they've been getting snow and we've been up here at a higher temperature, I like to call her now and go, how is it in Phoenix today? Well, I'm freezing to death. Yeah, it's 45 degrees. You live out there long enough, your blood gets thinned out. And there is, the first few years, you go and there's palm trees at Christmas. You go, this is cool. After a while, you go, this ain't Christmas. So you'll go, you really want to live 2 places so you can have all 4 seasons, the best of it. But notice we've got the days lead time, so we got to be concerned about these folks. And then we have an economic order quantity, and that's 89.53. Let's look at that. Okay. Now, this is going to use the square root function, okay? And it's going to equal the square root of 2 times the fixed cost of ordering, okay, times F11. And F11 is going to be what? Well, let's take a look at F11, and that is what we've got on hand. And that's going to be, and then we're going to divide that by the inventory carrying cost is a percentage of inventory value times E11. So we're doing that balancing act. Now, what you'll need to do, and this is what I would do, is if I encounter something like this, or it's time to create the equation, or let's see if I can find a little note thing on here. I missed it. Let's waste time doing that. That's good. Let's see if I can find myself a Word file over here. I'll find a notepad or something like that, and I'll put the thing out in a notepad or a Word file, and then just try to work out in English language what we've got going on there. I can, if I want to, I can also go ahead and I can insert a note for that and put a notepad in there. Okay. Now, so we have the order point, and then we have that day's usage, and we have the OQ. And so we're going to order 8,953. You see that very last one, we see the balance available. Okay. And would we reorder? Well, in this case, we're going to say yeah, because the balance available is below what? Exactly. So it tells me. Now, I'm going to use conditional formatting to tell me I want to order this. And if I have 1,000 of these items or 500 of these items, I'm going to use this type of tool to tell me I need to reorder. So it's a balancing act. Now, there are some folks who handle products that get excise taxes slapped on them, and they will use and they will do some fancy dancing to avoid paying taxes. For example, in just about every state, folks who distribute wine or alcohol, including beer, alcohol and spirits and beer, they have a month when they have the state people from the state government come out and figure out how much inventory they've got on the floor, and they charge them excise tax on the basis of their inventory. So what they'll do is they'll keep a minimal amount there to keep their customers going, but then they'll have inventory in trains, semi-trailers, etc., on the border so they don't get charged. And then once the period is over, it all rolls in. But they'll use these systems as a way to arbitrage or avoid paying the taxes, because the taxes on there are pretty prohibitive, and it can really jack up the price to retailers in terms of what, and that means folks who buy the stuff pay even more. And they walk you through it, and each of these, here's a conditional statement, okay? And if you take a look at it, J12 is equal to or less than G12, then it's yes. Otherwise, blank. And then we use conditional formatting there to tell us if I've got a yes, I put in a red shade and then dark red font for the letters. Okay. Once you've got the EOQ set up and running, you're good to go. Now, if you change some of the assumptions, or you have to change the assumptions, then you just change those, and you're going to see, you'll see the output, it will change as well. But we're trying to balance things. As I said, most of you will go to work for people, and if they're handling stuff that they sell, if they retail, or if they distribute things, then, or they make stuff, you're going to have an inventory system, and it'll probably be there and probably pretty easy to use. It will have all those things in there in order for you to go ahead and execute an order. If you have companies that have kind of what we call a strategic partnership or alliance, they'll share a web store. And so if I'm supplying company B over here and I own company A, I have a web store where they come in and they order what they need. And I make sure that it gets to them on time, and I send them an invoice and all that. They come in and they shop with me, and we share that, and they know what I've got on hand, etc. Because we're working together as partners, or we have a strategic alliance. Or there may be a long-term customer will have access to that type of data. Amazon has so many vendors, and they have a store behind their e-tail store that they deal with the folks who are suppliers. Because if you go order stuff on, or you're looking for stuff on Amazon today, you're going to find what? There are a lot of places that they'll refer you to a company that'll fulfill your need. It's not Amazon, but they have a client that works with these folks that serve as suppliers to them as they retail the stuff. And so when they sell, when you buy something, a product, they get a cut of the money, Amazon gets a cut of it, and you get the stuff. And there will be those times where Amazon will say, you have the better knowledge in terms of shipping it. You ship it directly to the consumer. And you'll see that if you go out and you shop and you use them. If you've got something like Prime, it's good, because if you use it enough times, it can save you a lot of money. Okay. If you want it the next day and all that business. If you don't use it very much, I don't know. Does this make sense? Like I said, it's not exciting. I understand that, until your stuff doesn't get there. It's not exciting until the stuff comes and it's not right. Downtown Oklahoma City, there's an empty warehouse now, but at one time it was a guy, and he imported exotic automobiles from around the world for high-end clients in this part of the country. So if you wanted to buy it, a souped up Jaguar. You went to him and ordered it. He got the thing from Great Britain or whoever manufactured something. Okay. And so his deal was he'd place the order, have it shipped, have the thing ready for you to go, and you pick it up. And he started running into problems with customs and all kinds of things that you could never imagine, transportation problems, and eventually just died because he was just not able to get stuff to people on time. But it was a pretty good business when he was doing it. And he could put a premium on top of the price of the automobile and then turn around also and put a price for carrying and getting it moved. So that's this hardware nuts. This is one that you could upload for 7. I'm going to close it off for just a minute. And you'll want to take a look at it some more. And I'm going to go back over into the modules area. As I said before, and as the course is called, it's business problem analysis and this issue of how much inventory to have, balancing it all. It's a business problem, and it's a big one, especially if I don't have the capacity, if I'm running what I call a just-in-time inventory. And that's where I maybe like have I use retail outlets like, I'll use food retail outlets, Applebee's or McDonald's or whoever. They really run a tight ship because they want as little space as possible devoted to 2 things, preparation and inventory, because they want the maximum amount of space for what? A bar where they make it, if it's Applebee's or one of those types of places, a bar where they sell a bunch of liquor because they make an enormous profit off that, and then seating for everybody. So they can cram more people in and run them in and out in an evening and make as much money as possible. And they are really good business people. I would say this, if you really truly want to stay with us and you want to get a degree in business and you want to go out there and be very good at what you do, this would be the time for you to start as you go into an establishment and take a look around and start to ask some questions to yourself. How do they get their inventory? How do they use their square footage? How much space do they devote, if they have to preparation? Okay. What are some of the problems they have in terms of maybe any consumer resistance to purchases of their product? Do they have a web presence? If they do, what's it like and what's it intended to do? If you get a chance and there's a company in your town or there's a company in here or in Oklahoma City, I can tell you this, most people who are successful business people are very, very gracious people. And they are also love to tell their stories. And you can learn a lot. So I can teach you this stuff in here and test you on it all day long. The next question is, do I have anything of value? Have I been out there and done something that says, yes, this stuff works? And I can tell you for sure it does. I've been in some situations where your heart just wants to stop. And you go, whoa. So I understand that these things are not foolproof, but they do work. And the wisdom that you're going to get from those kinds of folks, or any of the faculty here, none of us that teach here are people who've just been in academia all our lives. That there's no possible way you could do this. But I can tell you, if you find those folks out there, they'll tell you stories, they'll give you insights that will help you with your career. And they're folks that you want to try to, if you can get a practicum on somebody and pick their brain, what's it like to work in this industry? How long have you been here? What do you do all day? What's the deal? That is of great value. And respect them. When we did the little case about the break-even analysis, I can't tell you, that's just, that little tiny case says so much in the sense of the kind of courage it takes for a person to go start a business, the kind of courage it takes for them to stay in business, and the kind of challenge it's facing when they go into a place and go, I got to make a sale, or they go into a season and go, we've got to hit a sales market. If we don't, we're going to be laying some people off. And there is nothing more sickening than you'll ever have to do in your life, and that is to fire somebody or lay them off. Firing them is one thing, laying them off is another. When decisions were made above their head where they didn't do anything wrong, they worked hard, but you got to close up the shop because somebody upstairs made a mistake. That's a bad feeling. Bad feeling. It leaves a taste in your mouth you never get used to because those are people, their jobs, their families. It's their income, it's their lives. And if you've ever been through that, my parents are entrepreneurs, and I'm just so fortunate. They must have been magicians because I never really got a sense as a kid growing up that they're rich one day and they're poor the next. They're rich one day and they're poor the next. I never even felt that. Our parents never even gave that vibe. I was so fortunate in that. But they were pretty cool-headed people. But I know as I talked over the years to my dad's younger brother and other people that knew him, there were many times that he was on the cliff about to go off. Now, my mother was the Queen of Avon for a long time, but she had her own deal too. And she had ladies selling for her. And for years, I thought going to church was just time to go collect Avon money from everybody at church he was selling it to. And I may have told the story before. I asked my mom one time, I said, why are you in this business? Why do you do this? And she said, it's very simple. When someone feels good about how they look, they feel good about themselves. That's a pretty simple business mission statement, isn't it? And it said a lot about what she understood about people. If you go into business to use business as a vehicle to make the world better and to give people some excitement or some joy or some good times or a good product or to lower their stress because you give a product that used to produce stress, that's a good thing. People who are theologians call that common grace, meaning you're exhibiting the grace of God by showing how God loves everybody and cares for everybody. It's known as common grace. You may have read the passage, you may have heard about it before, maybe not. Because one day Jesus had concluded some of his dialogues and he went back with the disciples, and one of the disciples said, why do you always speak in parables? And does anybody know why he said what he said? This will tell you something about how much God loves people. Anybody know what he said? His response was interesting. He said, I speak in parables because if I spoke in any other way, I would only increase their condemnation. That's a loving God, isn't it? Those people that were wanting to debate with him, he spoke in parables. So their condemnation was even less than it would be. And God loves everybody. So you can be an instrument of his grace out there in terms of common grace. If you go to work for somebody and you can make people's lives better, you've performed a great act. And I would say I'm one of those people that, quite frankly, I firmly believe that hard work has gotten a bad name in our society. Hard work is good, and it's good for you. And especially, I would say this, if you want to be really humble, go on through school like me and collect a bunch of degrees, okay? And then at 11 o'clock at night, have the plumbing go out. And with all my vast knowledge, the plumbing's out. And what do? I open up my textbooks and I find out how to fix the plumbing, right? What do? Anybody got advice for me? What do? I call the plumber. That's right. A lowly plumber. He's not very well educated. What does he know? Or she? More than me. That's right. That's why when they say, I'll need $250, I go, gladly. So a lot of folks that do those kinds of jobs, I've got a guy that does painting for us. He's a magician. He's a and I couldn't paint to save my life. I couldn't do it. I've tried it as a homeowner through the years. I've tried those things, and usually what happens, they end up in disaster. And I call somebody and go, "Can you come fix it?" And they go, "Well, you should have done this." And I go, "I didn't know that." People over here that go through these technical degrees, have great respect for them. Great respect for them. Well, I've done about all I want to get done today, and you've had enough of me. So, anybody have any questions? If not, I'll call it a day, and I will see all of you online next week. Thank you much, folks.